Hey guys, welcome to Coturnix Corner. Hold on, I'm still trying to figure this out here. We can get rid of that. Welcome to Coturnix Corner Live. Joining me today is Chris Carnes from the ever popular YouTube channel, Slightly Rednecked. Welcome, Chris. Glad you could join us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I do got a few quick announcements that I want to run down real quick, and then we're going to be, Chris has got a little presentation or just some photos and stuff he's going to be talking about. And then we're going to go ahead and jump into the chat room and take your questions for Chris. If you guys have any questions, if you do me a favor and type the letter Q in front of your questions, that'll just help me find it a little bit easier. So, okay, let's see, where are we at here? First thing, shout out to our channel sponsors. Gopher Ridge Quail Farm, HP Murray's over there. He gives us hatching eggs to give away every week, so we appreciate that. And Hatching Time donates a $50 gift certificate, which will be given away tonight also. So thanks to the sponsors for supporting the channel. Also, I wanted to say over on the Facebook group page, we put up a post about sponsors for the Coturnix Kids program. Now that program, the original sponsors was due to run out in November. So we went ahead and made an announcement over there, and it was unbelievable how fast and how many people wanted to sponsor that program. But these are the sponsors that will be helping out this year, or actually 2025, with the Coturnix Kids program. We got Wholesome Harvest. They are supplying feed again like they did this year. Southern Biophiliac is a new sponsor. They will be providing hatching eggs and also will Big Spring Quail. We're going to kind of rotate every week, or not every week, but every month. One month it'll be Southern Biophiliac. The other month it'll be Big Spring Quail. And then Bryant's Roost, she is still going to supply the incubators for the kids program for the rest of the year. Pips and Chicks and Champions Blend are giving us the $25 hatching time, or not hatching time, but $25 Tractor Supply gift certificates each month. And then, of course, Hatching Time is sticking with us for another year, and they are still going to be donating the cage for the kids. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much to all the sponsors. We couldn't run the program without you guys, so really do appreciate it. Like I said, we're going to be giving away some hatching eggs tonight, a 30 count of, I believe they're mixed hatching eggs coming from Gopher Ridge, and then the $50 Hatching Time gift certificate. So if you guys would, if you want to get the hatching eggs or the gift certificate, comment either Gopher Ridge or Hatching Time, and I'll choose from those to let you, or for the giveaways. And I will tell you one thing, guys. It's usually the better questions for Chris are the people that we choose from. So if you're going to put your name in there for the hatching eggs, make sure you get some questions in for Chris, because those are the ones we usually choose from. So, Chris, if you would, update us on Slightly Redneck, what's been going on for the past year. I know it's been a while since we've seen each other, but bring us up to date.
What has been going on? Well, I don't know if a whole lot hasn't changed, really. I still do the weekly lives pretty much every week. I won't be doing it this Thursday evening. I do them normally 7 o'clock on Thursday evening, 7 o'clock Central. I won't be doing it this Thursday because it's Halloween. I didn't even think about that, and I got trick-or-treaters coming, some family and stuff. So take the day off for that, deal with them. But that's pretty standard weekly, live broadcast that I do. And it's just a question and answer session. I don't ever have anything planned out. We just talk about whatever. Sometimes we talk about religion and politics, things you're not supposed to talk about. But I always say, hey, you know what? We can have differences of opinions, still be friends. Well, there's no reason to be hateful with anybody because they have a different opinion than you, even if it is wrong. But I'm just kidding. Other than that, though, not much has changed, really. Still got the quail, the rabbits going. I did have some changes in the rabbitry. I had some sore hawk issues with the silver fox, a couple of silver fox, her, and a couple of the young ones. So I culled all of them and then picked up a couple of Tamucks here locally. So I'm waiting on them to grow out so I can breed them. Waiting on my other silver fox doe to give birth, probably coming up today maybe. I don't know. I haven't checked her since I got home. So anytime. Got let's see, I got about 30 or 40 quail in one of my hutches right now that are about going on 4 weeks old, and then another 30-ish in the brooder that are just at a week old. And that's probably about the last I'll hatch for the year, because it's going to start getting pretty cold here, and I don't like to try to brood them out through the wintertime. But not much else has changed. Not much else going on.
Speaking of winter, how well do your birds do outside?
They do fine. Okay. Yeah, I mean, as long as you give them a wind break, they can get out of the wind, which, half my hutch is solid, so they get out of the wind no problem. They do fine. Right. It doesn't seem to bother them at all. And I actually had I had two, they were about 2.5 week old baby birds. I moved out to the outside hutch. I move them out when they're about roughly 2 weeks old, get fully feathered out. I get pretty aggressive with lowering the temp in the brooder and getting them acclimated. I moved them out at 2.5 weeks. I moved them out at 2 weeks. So they were outside for 3 or 4 days. And then we had a cold front come through and got down to 33 degrees, I think. Didn't lose a single bird. They were all fine. So they actually are pretty cold hardy. It doesn't seem to bother them too much. Hardest part about winter is providing water, because it freezes.
Right. But other than that, mine's at the other extreme. I've got to deal with the heat and keeping water in there, because they drink so much of it, being out in that heat. So,
well, I mean, we're that way during the summer, but then we get the wintertime, it's the other way around.
Right. Cool. We can go ahead, if you want, Chris, bring them photos up that you sent me, and you want to talk a little bit about them. And
yeah, let's see what I can come up with. I didn't come prepared with necessarily a presentation, but this is my brooder.
Like I said, this is just a laid back BS session. Let people talk to you.
This is the brooder that I'm using right now. It's out in my shed, and it sits in. I've got what I use as my chicken brooder when I'm brooding chickens in the spring for meat chickens. Is the bed liner out of my truck. I took it out, multiple reasons why, but it's just a drop-in plastic bed liner. It's got a bunch of straw underneath it, so I set this brooder right inside of it, and it works perfect. It's hard to see the birds inside there. It's a little dirty right now because I hadn't cleaned it out yet, and that seems to be always when I take pictures. I always have to tell people, I haven't done my chores yet. It's okay. So this is a Dale's Quail's brooder, actually.
I was going to ask you that, because it does look very familiar.
Yeah, and you can tell. I mean, it's hard to see exactly what size it is, but you can see I've got 2 heat lamps on it right now. I do use an Inkbird temperature controller to control the heat, and I run 2 heat lamps in case one goes out. I still have one that's functional, especially right now, this time of year where nighttime's getting down in the 40s. First couple of days, I need to make sure I have redundancy.
That could definitely save you. In the event of a power outage.
Oh, and it did too. I had the heat lamp go out this week, so one of them is still going. So, and you can see the little string I've got tied over it. I had about a 5-foot black snake get in there on my last brood and ate a couple of my birds, and I think they were like day old. And I think he killed several of them, and I think he did that just by crawling over the top of them, probably because he was a pretty good sized snake. And the only way I could figure out he got in was pushed the lid up and crawled in through there. So I just tied a string around.
Okay, so the string is holding the lid down.
Yeah, it just keeps it from being pried open, basically.
Okay.
That's all it's doing. But that brooder's worked really well. It's a great brooder.
What is that, like 4x4 or something? 3x3?
Pretty close to that, yeah. It's close to 4x4. I don't know exactly what size. I'd have to measure it to find out.
How many birds are you putting in there at a time? Or don't you think
it varies. I mean, I had 55 in there the last time, and it was nowhere near overcrowded. I mean, and again, they're only in there for 2. Well, right now, these guys will probably stay in there till they're close to 3 weeks because it's starting to get pretty cold. But most of the time, I'm moving them outside at 2 weeks old and clearing it out. And it's not too crowded. I mean, I don't know how many you could get in there all at once. I mean, 100 would probably easily do if you're, going to move them out by the time they're 2 weeks old.
Right. And the problem with overcrowding chicks is they stink up a brooder really quick.
Yeah. And this has got a wire floor on it. I put the blue shop towels down I do that for the first week, and then I pull them up.
What size is the wire? Is it
It's
quarter inch or
a
half?
quarter inch.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then, so all the droppings will fall to the, well, it's all straw underneath it. And then I just clean that out.
Right. Good deal.
And then these are my outside hutches. Boy, that picture came through a little blurry, didn't it? Bad cell phone pic. But anyway, these are my outside hutches. I've got 2 of them this size. They are roughly 8x3, I think it is. And the reason they're 3 foot wide is because hardware cloth comes in 3 foot rolls. So I mean, I just built it to the size of the hardware cloth. Half of it, you can see the one half is closed in, the other half is open. So the half that's closed in has got a sandbox inside. My birds you can pretty easily fit. I think I've got, I don't know, 25 birds in one. The other hutch, the far one over there, you can't see the birds really, but those are my 3 and 4 week old roughly birds that are in it. And there's about 50 in there right now. As they start growing, as they get up to age, it'll start to get a little crowded. Not as bad as you'd think, honestly. I know the conventional wisdom is like 1 square foot per bird, but they all seem to huddle together no matter how many you put in there. So you can get away with a little bit more than that, especially if you're just growing them out. It's not that big of a deal. I do have a solar light on the hutch closest to me or closest to us in the picture. That's my main breeder cage, and the days are getting pretty short. So if I don't have light on them, I don't get any eggs. So I have a dusk to dawn light. It comes on when it gets dark and stays on until the battery runs down. And right now that's plenty. I'll usually have some issues with egg production towards the end of December till about the middle of January, because the days are so short that it doesn't charge the light up enough to run long enough. But other than that, it works the rest of the year. I don't have any issues.
So how many hours of daylight would you say you're getting with the lights?
I don't measure it. I mean, quail need about 14 to lay pretty consistently. I'm getting over 14, but I don't know exactly. I don't stay up late enough to see when the light goes off. It's on when I go to bed. It's off when I wake up in the morning because the battery's dead. But I don't really. As long as they're still laying, it's enough. I just don't know exactly how much it's putting out.
Right. And then all the droppings just fall down underneath the cage, and what is that, like a compost setup, or?
Yeah, well, and I just clean them out every once in a while. We have in the summertime, I don't usually clean it out because we get black soldier fly. They just naturally come in and lay their eggs there, and we get black soldier fly larvae, and it keeps that composted down. I mean, they're amazing. They are composting machines. If you have a bird that passes for some reason, you throw it underneath there and it's gone in 2 days. And I mean, they just keep that thing composted down. I don't have to mess with it during the summer. So in the fall, winter, the black soldier flies are gone now. So probably here in about a month, I'll just shovel it up, throw it in the compost pile. Once or twice a year. That's about it. I do have to clean the sandboxes out a little bit every couple of months. I just have a window screen. It's basically like an RV window screen. It's just it's only about that wide and about that long. And I scoop the sand up and sift it, and all the droppings stay on the screen and the sand falls through. So clean the sand.
So how long do you use the sand for?
Until I need more. Until they've until they've kicked enough out that I need to add more to it, which is, I don't know. I'd say probably I just added sand about a month ago. I probably won't have to do it again for another year.
Nice. Real nice. This is just another photo of your hutch.
You can see my solar panel there mounted on the side of the hutch to charge the light.
Oh, okay. Yep, I do see it.
You can see my roof on the top there, the piece of metal that covers that left-hand side blew over in the windstorms we've had. So I got to fix that, but that's an easy fix. I just got to fold it back over and screw it down. Yeah,
like I was saying earlier, I'm going to have to build me some type of an outdoor cage. How do these do in the heat of summer?
They do pretty good. I mean, the top is all wire, except for on the left-hand side, I do put, I need to replace it. It's getting pretty frayed, but it's like 3 mil clear plastic. And I put that over there just to keep rain out of the sandbox and to give them an area to get out of the rain. But in the summertime, they do pretty well. Of course, now I've got it in the shade. I mean, you can see all the trees around it. So the sun's not beating down on it, straight down on it in the summertime. It's still shaded. But they do fine. they drink a little bit more water. They still hang out in that closed-in section most of the time. They like the sandbox.
I see you're still using your bucket waters.
Right now, I am. Yeah, we haven't gotten down to freezing yet. So,
right. Nice.
When we get down to where it's freezing, I'll replace that. I use I'll run an extension cord out there and use a heated water. It's a.
Okay.
I can't remember. Is it Miller Manufacturer? I can't remember what brand it is, but it's a 2-gallon watering. It's got nipples on the water nipples on the side, and it's got a heated base that with the thermostat, and it kicks on when it gets to like 40 degrees. And it does a good job. As if you keep it out of the wind, it does a good job. Never freezes over. And we've been down well below zero.
You get much snow out there?
Sometimes from year to year, we get a couple of snows a year. What's different, I think, between us and like say further north is, we may get a pretty good snow. Couple of inches is really a pretty decent snow for us, 3-4 inches. But it doesn't last very long. It doesn't stick on the ground for months on end. It's like 4 or 5 days usually, and then it's melting off. So we get, once or twice a year usually. Some years not much, some years more, but not huge amounts of snow. This is the sandbox side. I've just got a 2x4, up on its end there on the one side to keep it from kicking all the sand out. And even, honestly, my 2-week-old birds get in and out of that sandbox no problem. It seems like an awful high, area for them to try to climb over, but they don't have an issue with it. They get in and out no problem. But if I find that if I use something shorter than that 2x4, they just kick the sand out. They just kick it all out. Quick. So I've tried putting, I've tried before in the past using like Tupperware containers or something to put sand in to let them, and they just, it's just all out in a matter of minutes. They just kick the sand out like crazy. And this will last for, like I said, probably a year and a half if I just clean it out once every month or so. And the good thing about the sandbox is they lay almost all their eggs in the sandbox, and they are. That
was my next question.
Yeah, and they're easier to collect, and they're clean. There's never anything stuck to them, hardly ever. They come out way cleaner.
Nice. Let's see.
And just a little wider shot to give you an idea of how it works. My other hutch, I actually have the sandbox. I built it a little bit differently. Instead of having, like you can see the doorway there on the right-hand side where the quail come through into this area, I built the sandbox all the way up to that doorway. And it's a little bit shorter on this side, so it's not quite as big. But so instead of having, the sandbox, they jump out, walk across wire to get through the door. The doorway is just right there. So, but in both ways work just fine. The difference, I think, with the other way is it gives a little bit more support. That wire that runs underneath, that's just like a 1/4-inch sheet of plywood that's up and down right there. So the wire underneath that is not stapled to that, and it sags a little bit right there, which is not a big deal, but it just gives a little bit more support when I built it directly up against it.
So your floors are 1/2 by 1/2 wire?
1/4-inch, I think. Well, no, maybe they're 1/2 inch wire, I believe. Yeah, it's 1/2 inch.
Do you run into any problems with predators? Like rats or something trying to get up and bite their feet?
Not really. We don't have a big rat problem here. I live in town, so and we do get predators. I get skunks, I get possums, I get raccoons. So far, the only thing that's ever been able to make it into one of my hutches was I had about a 6-foot black snake in here. Oh, it's been over the summertime at some point. And he got in. I guarantee he got in because I had a gap where I pulled the wire up on the top to run the extension cord through for the watering unit. That's where he got in. So I had to catch him and get him out of the hutch. But that's the only thing that's gotten in. I put a trail cam out here before. Now, I did have one time where I had a fox that was coming up and grabbing their feet through the wire and pulling their legs off through the wire. And I strung a piece of electric wire around the bottom of the hutch, and he hasn't been back since. And then I've had raccoons. I've caught them on camera trying to, you'll see them like reaching up towards the hutch, but they give up pretty quick and move on. That's it. I've never had anything else really get in. Somebody did mention something. I felt kind of stupid after I went through all the work of putting a solar or a electric fence around it. Somebody said, you could have just put another layer of wire about 3 inches below the floor.
A false floor, right?
Right, exactly. And I'm like, well, duh, that makes perfect sense and would have been more permanent and easier. But
yeah, but it's fun catching them on the trail cam when they hit that wire.
yeah, no kidding. I always tell people, I say, man, you have a predator problem. This is one way. Put a piece of electric wire there, get you some aluminum foil, spread some peanut butter on it, fold that over that about every 8 inches or so. And everything loves peanut butter. They'll be drawn to it. You know, they come up and they touch their tongue to that foil with that peanut butter on it, and zap, and they will never be back. They'll be done.
Yeah. Since I moved my birds out into the aviary, I had a few. We got quite a few feral cats that run around here.
We do too.
And I've been setting a live trap to catch them. I don't want to kill them, so I catch them and then I take them across the river, thinking hopefully they're not going to be able to make it back. And so far, so good. They haven't been able to, and I don't know if they could get in my aviary anyhow, but I don't want them to stress my birds out, you know?
Yeah. I've never noticed any issues with my birds getting too stressed out by any kind of predator, but I'm not getting persistent predator pressure either. So,
right.
But it doesn't seem to, like, even the black snake was in there. I mean, I had eggs the next day and they never slowed down. It didn't seem to bother them too much. When I opened the hutch up, I mean, there's a 6-foot black snake laying in there, pretty good size one. And birds just walking all over him, walking around. I mean, like they didn't even. I mean, he's eater to eat, and he's okay. He's not going to kill again. So,
you're right. Yeah, they didn't care.
No.
Cool. All right. Well, let's run over into the chat room real quick and take some questions. Again, guys, if you weren't in here earlier, if you got questions for Chris, if you type the letter Q in front of your questions, just to help me find them, and so I don't miss any. And like I said earlier, it's usually the questions that get selected for the giveaways. So that's a little incentive to get some questions going. All right. Sousaphone says, questions. How do you both personally handle mispositions? I had 3 out of 4. Wait, I just had 3 out of 14 make it yesterday. All 9 were late pippers and pipped in odd places. And then it went too long, lost all but 3.
Okay. I'm not. I guess that's what you mean by misposition, like they pipped the wrong part of the egg or something like that.
That's what I'm taking from it. Yeah.
Which is kind of. I don't know if there is a possibility to pip the wrong side of the egg. I mean, they just pip wherever they are, right? I don't know.
I've had them hatch out when they pipped on the pointy end. I've had them hatch out. So
most of the time when I have issues, and you're saying you had 3 out of 14 make it yesterday, so 3. You had 14 eggs set and only 3 hatched. And you said. All 9 were late pippers and pipped in odd places. That makes me think you may have a little bit of a temperature issue in your incubator. Usually what I find is when I have a lot of eggs that are pipping late, and a lot of times those are the birds that when they do hatch, they end up with splayed legs or curled toes or something like that, wry neck, you know, those kinds of issues because they spent too long in the egg. They couldn't get out. There's 2 things that could cause that. Humidity. If the humidity drops significantly at the wrong time, that can cause some of those issues. But the most common thing is probably a temperature issue in the incubator. So I start with calibrating my incubator. Make sure 2 things. Make sure it's in a fairly stable environment, not sitting in front of a window. I made that mistake one time. I had the blinds open, sitting right in front of a window, and the sun coming across in the midday would just beat down on that incubator. My hatch rates were terrible. As soon as I closed the blinds, boom, right back up. So, you know, check that. Throw it to, and if you got like a Govee thermometers, those are pretty good because they will track temperature over time. So you can throw a couple of those. I always get 2. So I know I have 3 basically, the incubator and then 2 others. And if 2 of those read the same, I trust those. Throw them in your incubator, run it for a little while without any eggs in it and see, is it running? Is it actually reading right? It's pretty common for incubators to be off just a little bit. And that's probably the big issue. What do you think, Terry? What do you have anything different?
No, exactly what you said. I mean, that's one of the first things I do, even on my incubators that I trust. I always fire them up 48 hours in advance of setting eggs, just to make sure that everything's still running smooth. I'm getting consistent temperatures, consistent humidity. And that's one thing I found out about being down here in Florida is our humidity changes pretty much daily. I mean, in the summertime, the humidity is really high, so you got to pay attention to what the incubator is doing. And in the wintertime, it's so dry that the humidity in the incubator changes. So
that's the same thing here. We have the same. Summertime's high humidity, wintertime's dry.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
humidity is
definitely.
not, I mean, don't stress about your humidity too much. It's not as big of a deal. I mean, you could definitely be too dry or too humid. But if you're, as long as you're like over 40% humidity before lockdown and, you know, you're not getting over like 85% humidity, you're probably going to be okay. Bump it up a little bit during lockdown, and that's about all you have to worry about.
Okay, let's see. Homestead Matter says, Chris, if you only had one animal to keep, dog doesn't count, obviously, which would you choose and why?
I get asked that every once in a while. I think I probably go back and forth on it. And of course, it would be the dog if that was an option because he's my buddy. But if I had to, you know, I'm assuming what you're talking about is between quail and rabbits, which one would I keep? And, you know, if I had to go with one, it would probably be the quail. It's just easier with the quail to be able to, like, if I need a whole bunch, to ramp up really quick. You can't just, you know, twist the rabbit's ear and make it have more babies. It just doesn't work that way. Plus, they do take up more cage space. They're slightly more work. They're not a ton of work, but they are slightly more. It's just a little bit easier with ramping up quick with the quail. So I think that's probably what I would go with. If I had to just do one, it would probably be the quail.
And the turnaround too, as far as meat and eggs, it's so fast. You know?
Yeah, well, and you know, rabbits aren't that much behind. I mean, you get good meat rabbits, you're looking at from the time they're born 8 weeks until they're butcher size. Okay. But I mean, they do take 30 days to be born, and you're getting a limited number of them. Whereas you can't just, you know, you can set 100 eggs, or you can set 50 eggs, or you know, however many you want, and you know, ramp up pretty quick. And with rabbits, you do, if you want to, you know, say you've only got two, you breed them and you have babies. I mean, they may be ready to process at 8 weeks, but if you want to ramp up your production and get more breeders, well, it takes them 6 months, 7 months, 8 months to get up to breeding size. So yeah, there is a little bit of a trade-off there.
Okay, Teresa says, question, I've got two gobies in my little giant, one in the upper left, one in the lower right. They're reading 99.4 and 101.1. Is that okay? And it does have the fan.
So I would say, yeah, that's probably going to be okay. I mean, I wouldn't worry about that too much. 101.1 is a little bit high. 99.4 is about right. You know, look up instructions on how to calibrate your gobies too. Make sure they're calibrated because it could be just an error in the thermometer itself reading wrong. What's your little giant thermometer saying on the incubator itself? And you know, if it's in the same range as those two, you're in the right range. You're pretty good. If your hatch rates are okay, I wouldn't even mess with it. I wouldn't worry about it too much. You know, I think a lot of times people will, you know, do incubator calibrations like that where they're having good hatch rates, and you're looking at it and you're seeing your and you're trying to get it right at 99.5, and you're adjusting like crazy, and you end up causing more problems than it's worth. You're right in the range, so I would say it's probably okay. I will say one thing about Little Giant. If you do have any issues, contact customer service. Their customer service is fantastic. They will.
Are you still running yours?
I'm not right now because I got I had an incubator gifted to me. It's the Brincy Ovation 56 Advance, I think it is. So I've been using that one, testing it out, and it works great too. But the thing about Little Giant, and I haven't had to test out Brincy, they may be the same, but Little Giant's customer service is, I mean, top notch. They'll send you replacement parts, and I mean, no questions asked. They're super.
I think I remember that on one of your videos. You said something went wrong with the incubator, and you contacted them, and they had parts out to you.
Yeah, just a couple of days. I mean, they don't ask you like, when did you buy it, proof of purchase, anything. It just,
no, that's great.
They troubleshoot it. Nope, sounds like this issue. Send the part right out. I've done it twice.
Nice. Okay, All Canoon Exterior says, question, any tips and tricks for waterers in the winter?
Yeah, I don't know if this question was asked before I talked about it, but in the wintertime, I do use a heated waterer. It's I can't remember the brand name. If you go to my Amazon shop, which if you go to any of my videos, there's a link to it in the bottom. It's in my Amazon shop. You can find it. It's about a 2-gallon bucket with a heated base on it that plugs in. It's got a thermostat in it that kicks on at about 40 degrees, and it has nipple waterers on the sides of it. And it works really well. If you keep it out of the wind, I have not had it freeze, and we've been well below zero before. So it does a great job. Now, before I had that, what I used to do is I would take Tupperware style containers and cut a hole in them. Same thing I do for my feeders. cut a hole in them about the size for a bird to get its head through. And then I would put water in the bottom of those. And I just had a couple of them. So I would take it out, fill it, you know, put water in it all the way up to the bottom of the hole on the side, put it in the cage. And then when I got home from work that day, trade it out with one that's, you know, not frozen and give them water. And then, you know, just trade that out a couple of times a day. And that worked okay. It's just a little bit more work.
Right.
But I will say, if you are going to use a container to water them in the winter, put a lid on it. It's got to have a lid, because otherwise they'll get in it, and they'll foul it all up. They'll make it nasty. Plus they're getting wet, and it's wintertime, and they'll freeze to the cage, and it's just a bad thing. You need a lid and holes in the side for them to stick their heads through.
Okay. Okay, Hannah Bishop says, questions. When you introduce young birds, do they attach themselves to the older birds? I'm just trying to figure out if it's normal or because I introduced them to a mama after hatch.
I don't know that. I mean, I don't know that I pay enough attention to them to know whether they're attaching to one bird or another, but I've never noticed that. I usually introduce my young birds, if I'm going to be mixing birds in to an existing flocks, I like to introduce them before, like at 3 weeks old, really no later than that, because I find that there's much less aggression at that time. If you wait till they get older, they start to be seen as competition, I guess, like sexually mature birds, when they start hitting about 4 to 5 weeks old. And, you get that aggression where they're getting all territorial and picking on them. Whereas if you throw them in there at like 2.5 weeks old, 2 weeks old, 3 weeks old, they seem to just mix right in with the flock, no problem whatsoever. But I don't know that I've ever noticed them like attaching to another bird, but I don't sit out there and just watch my birds either. So
right.
I mean, maybe they do, and I just haven't noticed. Good question.
Yeah. I just put, I had a hatch or 2 hatches. They were 2 weeks apart. I put the older ones out there. And then I think like 2 weeks later, I put the second batch out there. And I did notice the older ones were kind of chasing the younger chicks around a little bit, but they weren't really, attacking them. So I just let them go. And now they all seem to be doing fine. I mean, they're, getting along great. So.
Yeah, it's way better than when you try to add. If you wait till they get to be like 6-7 weeks old, and then you try to add them in, they're going to lose eyes. They're going to get. I mean, it's a bloodbath.
Yeah. All right, all out of spoons has questions. When can chicks be added to breeder flocks?
I think we kind of answered that already just now, actually. About 2 weeks old is when I would do it. 2 to 3 weeks old, somewhere right around in there. It works out way better. I never have hardly any issues with aggression with them when I do it that way.
What about on the other end, older birds, introducing younger birds into an older bird group?
Well, that's when I do it at 2 weeks old, 2 to 3 weeks old. I throw them in with my existing breeders, and they just grow up and
you
just
have no problems.
No problems hardly at all. Occasionally, I'll have like one bird for whatever reason, just all of a sudden one day gets picked on by the other birds, but that's pretty rare. But yeah, when I throw 2-week-old birds in with my existing breeders, they just blend right in. I mean, I hardly ever have any issues with them.
Right. And two, with your cages having those 2 separate compartments, the regular cage side and then the sand bath side, they, even if they were getting attacked, they could always, run away and get away from the other bird,
Yeah, they can. I mean, I guess that and if the other bird's going to chase them, I mean, there's not really anywhere for them to hide completely, but yeah, they don't have to be right up on each other all the time either. Sure. So that may help.
Dave says, what's the average count of birds you like to keep in your hutches?
Well, I mean, it varies greatly because I use one primarily as a grow out, the other primarily as a breeder hutch. And usually I'm not keeping more than about 20-ish birds in my breeder hutch because that's just a good, I mean, I can collect plenty of eggs to hatch with 20 birds. In my grow out pens though, I mean, I'll put 50, 60, sometimes 70 birds in there to grow out because they're only really getting crowded for the last week and a half, 2 weeks, and then they're getting processed.
All Out of Spoon says, really appreciate both of you. We've learned so much from both your channels. Purchased quail chicks recently, then bought a laying flock with a cage. Wouldn't have done it without your channel. Thanks.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad to hear that. Glad to hear that you found them helpful.
Susan Phone says, Chris, your sandbox video really helped me, and I added mine to my 13-day-old chickies yesterday. I appreciate both of your work and videos. So helpful.
Awesome. Yeah, you probably won't be sorry with that. I mean, if you can keep the sand in the box, they don't kick it all out. Yeah, you're like I said, the biggest benefit I find is that they lay almost all their eggs in there, and they just come out clean. I mean, the eggs are just clean every time. It's great.
Yeah, it's going to be something new for me because ever since I've been in quail, it's always been more of a commercial setup, with cages.
With like rollout cage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So now I've got them outside. There's something a little more natural, I'm really interested to see how well they're going to do out there.
I'd be kind of curious to see that too. I get people that ask me about aviaries and things like that, and I'd be curious to see if in that more natural setting, if they would actually go broody and start, hatching some of
that. Was one of my first reasons for building the aviary, because I wanted to produce some broody hens, and I didn't really notice it, but then again, I was collecting eggs, pretty much daily. I never really saw where they were laying like a clutch of eggs,
right?
Like they were getting ready to sit on them. So I don't know. I might let them do it this time though, see what happens.
And I've heard mixed results from people. Some people say, well, they do sometimes go broody in that environment. They will hatch out their eggs, but even then, they don't usually do a great job. They're just not fantastic at it. Yep. But you may have different results. Who knows?
Okay. Jeremiah says, question, how long have you been raising quail and meat rabbits for, and what got you into raising them?
Let's see. It's been a little over 10 years, I believe. What got me into them is just to be able to produce my own meat. I mean, I live in town, so I'm kind of limited on what I can't put a cow in my backyard, so I can't have goats. I mean, I can't do pigs. Definitely can't do pigs. I would draw way too much attention. I could do chickens, but I can't have a rooster, so I can only have egg-laying chickens, and all I can do is produce eggs. Whereas with meat, with rabbits and quail, nobody even knows they're back there, and I get meat and eggs out of it. So that's why I did it.
So you say about 10 years you've been doing it?
Yeah, roughly a little over.
How old's your channel?
A little over 10 years. I started the channel right about the time I started.
I noticed you're doing you broke 100,000 subscribers, right?
I did. Did that a little bit like late last year, I think it was.
Very cool.
Broke 100,000. Yeah, I got the silver plaque right here. I can show you.
Oh, that come from YouTube.
Yeah, for 100,000. It's a little dusty right now, but there it is. Yeah.
Nice.
So yeah, I haven't hung it up. Should probably hang it up behind me like all those other YouTubers do, right?
Yeah, right.
But I have not done that.
All right, let's see where we at here. Susan Phone's got another question. Says, how should we prep an outdoor hutch for colder temperatures? I plan on backing the hutch up to the house when they go outside, so we don't have any trees. Oh,
okay. So yeah, I would say, I mean, if you're going to back it up to your house, here's a few considerations. You might put something up to, like, I'm assuming you'll have a slanted roof to let water run off. And if you put that right up against your house, all that water is going to run right against your house. Ask me how I know, because I had my rabbits up there for a while. And it will eventually, like, I don't know what kind of siding you have on there, but it eventually will do some damage, So you may have something to kind of block the water back there and get it to go straight down or something. They'll probably dig a trench right there too, which may or may not be a big deal. As far as preparing them for the colder temperatures, just give them an area where they can get out of the wind. You may have to kind of like wrap half the hutch or something with a blanket or a, piece of, clear plastic or something. I don't know if I'd use clear plastic on the sides if the sun's going to hit it, because it can warm up quite a bit. But, if you can close off part of the hutch, just give them, or even like a big box with a hole cut in it that they can get inside, just so they can get out of the wind. That's all they need. They're going to do just fine. That's all I do with mine. I don't change my hutches at all. And, there's just that half that's blocked off from the wind and stuff with the sandbox in it. And that's it. I mean, it's the same summer and winter. I don't change it at all.
There's the puppy.
Yep,
yeah. And there he goes.
He'll come back.
All right.
Yeah. And he's leaving again.
Yep. Creative Critter says, how many males to females do you keep in that size?
Okay. Well, males to females, it's regardless of size. I try to keep about one male for every 4 to 5 hens that I have to ensure good fertility. Really about 1 to 5 is good. But I tend to have, I tend to go like 1 to 5, and then throw 1 extra rooster in, because I don't keep individual breeding groups. I keep a whole hutch with 15 hens or 20 hens and maybe 5 roosters. That gives me a 1 to 4 ratio, and that also gives me a little bit more. So if I lose a rooster for whatever reason, I'm not just all of a sudden losing fertility. So about 1 to 5. If you go 1 to 6, your fertility suffers just a little bit. If you go less than 1 to 4, then your hens get beat up because they get overbred, and they don't have any feathers on their head. They'll just be stripped clean, and it's kind of rough on them.
I had a question I was going to ask you. I forgot.
Uh-oh, I talk too much.
No, I think it's an age thing.
Well, that happens to me too.
I forget stuff all the time here. Kurt V says, question: when butchering, do you vacuum seal before going into the freezer? What's the best way you like to cook it?
Okay, so yeah, I do usually vacuum seal them before I put them in the freezer, and I just do it in groups of usually like 4. It's usually just my wife and I that are eating, so 2 per person is kind of what I figure for a meal. So I'll put them in 4, maybe 6 in a vacuum seal bag, and then vacuum seal that. A lot of the times I'm usually just saving the breast. I don't even mess with the legs. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, but there's just not a whole lot of meat on them except for the breast, So when I'm processing, especially if I've got a lot of birds, I find it easier just to, instead of, dressing them completely, skinning them completely and spatchcocking them or whatever, I just grab the breast and pop it out, and it's quick, it's easy. I don't have to gut them or anything. It's just done, So anyway, I let them rest in the fridge for a day or 2, usually about 2, maybe 3 days, to let it age a little bit, let rigor mortis leave the meat. Then I throw them in vacuum seal bags, vacuum seal them up, and they go in the freezer. As far as cooking them, there's a lot of ways I like to cook them. One of my favorites is probably like a basic saute, where you would take the quail, the breast, you can leave it on the bone or you can cut it off the bone, either way you want to, and dust it kind of lightly in flour, in some, take some butter in a, cast iron skillet or whatever skillet, kind of brown that lightly on either side. And then basically you take those out once they're just a little bit browned, take the quail out, throw some onions, mushrooms, whatever you like in there, a little bit of flour, basically make a roux, thin it out a little bit to make a gravy more or less, put the quail back in there, put a lid over it, let it simmer until done. Nice. So it's just a basic saute. You can serve that with potatoes, or mashed potatoes are good. Egg noodles are good with that. Something thick and heavy that would sop up that gravy mix. Those are I like, that's probably one of my favorite ways to eat it. But I've also done it. It does pretty good in quesadillas. I think you cut the meat off the bone, and it's pretty easy to cut the meat off the breast, and just season it up like you would chicken for a quesadilla, and it does pretty good that way. I've done it in let's see. Oh, another way that's really good if you're introducing new people to it, like a family barbecue or something like that, is cut the breast meat off the bone, put a piece of jalapeno and cheddar cheese on it, wrap it with bacon, throw it on the grill, maybe brush it with some barbecue sauce, or I like blue cheese wrapped in bacon, brushed with Frank's Red Hot, like a buffalo style. Throw it on there until the bacon's done, and it's good that way too.
I'm gonna have to come out for dinner one night.
Yeah.
Sound like you know your way around the kitchen.
Sometimes some things turn out good, and every once in a while you make something you're like, that wasn't good at all. But
right. Okay. Ed says, question: which jumbos do you like to raise, such as whites, browns, mixed colors, or maybe celadons?
There was a time that I was really into all these different colors and all the different things, but it was kind of like Queen says, the beauty in their style went kind of smooth after a while. And when it comes to meat and egg production, Jumbo Pharaoh by far is my absolute favorite. It's just, there's so many benefits to them. To me, when I had like all white birds, they were the most aggressive birds I've ever had. They were vicious. I mean, I constantly had issues with aggression. You raise them together, they're fine. And then one day they just turn on each other and tear each other up. And I had some of the same issues with some of the other mixed colors and things. Plus, I like to be able to just look at a bird and say, that's a rooster, that's a hen. I don't want to have to pick them up and vent sex them. And with the Jumbo Browns, you can feather sex them with most of the mixed colors, the whites, some of those kinds of things. You have to vent sex them to figure out if they're male or female, which is not terribly hard, but it does require you keeping track of which birds you've already sexed and which ones you haven't, and it's a lot more work than just looking at them and saying that's a rooster.
Sure.
You know,
Absolutely.
and as far as the celadons go, I mean, that's a cool thing, but I always had a hard time, like, and part of it's me, because I didn't get, like, I had some celadon egg layers for a while, but I threw them in with my regular flock because I just don't have that many hutches right now. And then eventually that gene just breeds out of them. You just don't have it anymore. So, I mean, I had a hard time keeping it going. And again, it was kind of one of those things, like, it's not that cool after a while. I mean, you've seen it, it's done, you know.
Yeah, it's an egg color.
Right.
All right. All out of spins this question. What's the best way to mark quail? Seeing a lot of reviews saying they lose bands. Okay. Want to keep track of who's older versus younger in the breeder cages. Best to flock separate instead.
Well,
yeah.
Okay. So I understand what you're asking. Basically, you want to be able to mark them to say these are the older birds, these are the younger birds. I honestly don't worry about it too much. What I do when I go in, if I'm going to cull a bunch of older birds, most of the time when I'm culling older birds, my younger birds are fairly significantly younger than my older birds. So, I mean, they're all fully grown, but there's probably a couple of month age difference at least. So I can usually pick out the older birds because they've got the longer beaks. Their beaks are kind of like fingernails. They grow, and you'll have like a little quick kind of on the end of it, if that makes sense. So I can usually tell, well, that bird's a little older because its beak's a lot longer, more curved. These birds are a little younger. They're not grown out quite as much on the beak, and I can just tell that way. And if I don't get it right, I'm not really that worried about it. You know, I just, I mean, usually what I'm doing is I'm taking a young group of birds, and those are going to be my next breeders, and I throw them in with my existing birds at, 2 weeks old, 3 weeks old, or whatever. Or I may put them in their, usually I'm throwing them in there. And then I just, once they all start laying eggs, I go in and I pick all the birds with longer beaks, take them out, process them. And I may leave an older one in there from time to time, but it hasn't really been a big deal. Right. So I don't know if I can answer you with the best way to mark the quail. I know some people have put bands on their legs, but you're saying they lose the bands over time. So I don't have experience with that, so I can't really answer that one for you necessarily. I guess you could take magic markers and, like, mark them. I don't know where you'd mark them, though, because they lose feathers from time. I don't know how well that'd be permanent, but that's how I usually figure out my older birds from my younger birds.
Yeah. I just used, when I did band my birds, I would use the little 4-inch zip ties. You could buy them in 1,000 different colors, so yeah, that really worked well.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But a lot of times when I had my cages too, I had certain groups of birds. I had cage cards on the outside of each cage. Right. I could just write on that card, what it was. So.
Well, in that sense, you're keeping older birds all in one cage, the younger birds in another cage. Yeah. So that makes it pretty easy. I mean, it's really however you want to do it. I mean, I don't really stress about it too much. I'm not in it for commercial reasons necessarily, so I'm not really that worried if I have a slight drop in egg production, because I can pick it right back up pretty quick. And I just kind of, like I said, I just go with it's got a longer beak, it's an older bird. So.
Okay. Let's see. Throw this one up there. Ed says, at Jones, you both I made out an outdoor setup, 3 layers like Terry's in a sandbox in the 1/3 redneck style.
Okay. Well, yeah, why not? Do what works for you.
Exactly. Dave says, what projects or expansions do you have planned with your homestead?
I don't know. I mean, something's always coming up, and I always think about things, and I always kind of sit on them for a little while because I want to make sure it's an idea I want to do. And because I tend to get like ADD where I'm like, get excited about something like, oh yeah, let's do that. And if I go out and do it, then I get bored with it. So I wait a little while and see if it's something that's kind of stuck with me for a long time that I think I'm going to do at some point is homing pigeons. Cause I just think they're the coolest things. And, I would prefer probably get some white homing pigeons and then maybe rent them out for like weddings and things like that. I think it's a great idea. You rent them out for a wedding, they pay you, you go and release the birds, they fly back home and you do it again. It seems like a great thing. So, but yeah, that's something I think they're pretty cool. I think I might do at some point. I don't know what else I can get away with here. I mean, we already do the meat rabbits. We already do the quail. We do meat chickens in the spring. And pushing it much further than that is probably, I mean, I don't have the city on my back right now, and I don't, you know, as long as I don't go too overboard, I can probably stay under the radar.
Yep. That's the way to do it. All right. David says, question, Chris, do you sell your eggs for consumption? And if so, how much do you sell them for here in Missouri?
Oh, another show me stater here. So I don't typically sell eggs for, I mean, I do occasionally if somebody wants some or something. I haven't found a good market for it where it made it worth doing, honestly. Usually, I mean, you're doing good if you can get $5 a dozen for quail eggs. And that's, I mean, to me, that seems kind of high, but it's just not worth it for me to go through all the effort to sell them for $5 a dozen. You know, it's just, I don't think it's worth it to me. So I don't really sell them for consumption. Occasionally I'll sell some hatching eggs to somebody. Usually it's somebody locally that watches my channel and then reaches out to me and wants to buy some. And I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. Here you go. But I'm not, and I don't really get in the market of selling eggs. I find that usually when you're looking Craigslist, there's almost always somebody in my area selling eggs for $4 a dozen, $5 a dozen. Yep. So that's about the going rate.
I haven't done it in a while, but when I had the birds out in the carport, I could sell enough eggs to feed all my birds, you know, eating eggs.
Yeah, but you had a lot more birds too, so you produce a lot more eggs, you know.
And I had to buy a lot more feed too.
Right, exactly. So, you know, to me, I mean, when I'm keeping like 20 birds out there, I can't. Again, I don't want to produce. You know, I don't want to carry 500 breeders. You know, 300 breeders. That's just too much for me to run a deal with. And if I was doing that much, then yeah, I'd probably market. But you know, really, I think to do good marketing with eggs, you'd almost have to get in with like restaurants or something like that. And then you're looking at some regulations to have to be government interference and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So I just don't mess with it. I do think that there's probably a market for balut, but I haven't really found it yet.
I could do it. Balut. I mean, I've been asked for balut eggs, but I think the going price for them was $1 an egg, and it just wasn't worth the incubation time. And I was always worried about giving somebody a bad egg. You know.
Yeah, I know that's my concern too.
Sick. Yeah, I never went that route. All right, Homestead Matter says, question: what has been the biggest hurdle for you both?
Oh boy, I don't know that there have been any huge hurdles. I mean, the biggest hurdle is probably always money. I mean, you always want to do something, but do you have enough money to do it? You know, because it's not, you know, it's not expensive, but it's not super cheap to build a hutch. You know, each one of my hutches cost me, and this was well before inflation and things, but cost me about $100 to build, which is not, I mean, it's not life-breaking money, but still, I mean, there's always something I can spend $100 on besides building a hutch, you know? So, yeah, that's probably the biggest hurdle is just coming up with the money to do the things you want to do. Making sure you're not going overboard and, you know, spending all your money on feed or something when you're not really producing much, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, my biggest was probably the issue with the dust and dander out there in the shop. I tried several different ways of, you know, eliminating it: exhaust fans, intake fans, filters. You ever see that you take a box fan and you hang a filter on the back of the fan?
Yeah.
I did those and it was still getting to where every time I walked out in there, I was starting to hack and stuff. So
it's incredible how much, it's how much dander they produce. It's just, you don't notice it until you put them in an enclosed area, and then it's just incredible. I mean, it's just amazing.
Well, I mentioned it here on the channel. I haven't told you yet, Chris, but when I got rid of all the birds inside, we gutted the whole room, tore down all the drywall, pulled out all the insulation. You would not believe the amount of dust and dander that was behind the drywall in the walls.
Yeah,
I have no idea how it got there, but it was there. So, no, it was crazy. That's why I decided, you know what, that's it. I'm going to just get rid of everything, and I'll put some birds out back, basically like you do.
Yeah. I was raising them inside for a short while in stacking cages, and I got real quick. I got sick of emptying dropping trays every day.
Oh yeah.
And not only that, but if you have like a water that leaks in that dropping tray, oh my gosh, that's the worst. I mean, if they're dry, it's not terrible, but if they gets wet, that's one of the worst smells ever, you know. So
Exactly.
I moved them outside. My life has been so much better since then.
Yeah. All right. Child of God says, questions. How do you get just the breast off? I keep the breast only, but I have to use a fillet knife to cut it off.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, it's like you would remove a breast from a chicken. You know, I mean, you just stick your knife. Usually I just use the knife point because they're pretty small. Fillet knife, I guess, would work. I like a little sturdier knife, honestly. And I actually probably use way too big of a knife because it's my favorite knife. But just stick it in and follow the bone basically all the way down the breastbone. When you get to the bottom of the, this is hard to explain without having it there. Start at the back of the breast, follow it all the way down to the front, and then you'll go down the front of the breast. When you get down to the bottom, the bone at the bottom curves, so you'll have to kind of curve around. And then it's just a matter of kind of work it away from the bone at the top and just kind of cut just a little bit to get it to work away, and it comes right off. It's usually pretty easy for me. But it's just like you would, start with a turkey if you need to, because that's way bigger and way easier, but it's the same process,
So when you're butchering, what do? You just skin them and then peel the breast away from the...
Yeah, it's like dove hunters do, basically. If you ever seen dove hunters breast a dove, basically I just turn the bird on its back. I dispatch it first, turn the bird on its back, peel the breast open, the skin on the breast, just split it open, stick my thumb under the keel, up by the neck, and just pop it out. Sometimes I have to use a pair of scissors to snip right where it connects at the wings. Snip right there. But that's it. I just pop the breast out, and then, sometimes I'll go ahead and skin out the legs and take them because there's not really any meat on the rest. It's just legs and breast, and the legs to me are hardly worth it because they're just a nibble. But my wife,
I love the legs.
Yeah, my wife.
My wife deep fries them, and we sit around and eat them like chicken nuggets.
Yeah, and that's good. It's just it's a lot of work for very little meat, in my opinion. But
exactly.
But I get it. I mean, if you want to, it's pretty easy to skin the legs out at that point. You don't have to skin the whole bird. You can just pop the leg out of socket, basically pull the skin off the leg and snip it off right there and have them. And I'll do that sometimes too. But that saves you having to skin the whole bird. It's so much faster, so much easier, in my opinion. You don't have to skin the whole bird, gut it. It's just all contained.
Yeah. David says, Chris, you should do a cooking show with your quail recipe.
I've done some cooking videos on it.
I was going to say, I thought I saw a few on your channel.
I mean, I've done a few. I don't know that I'm the best cooking show person. I don't know, but
host.
I've done it. I've done it before. I should do some more sometime soon.
There you go. And you were just talking about content.
That's right.
Hannah wants to know, how old do you cull your breeders?
I don't really keep that close of track of. I'm getting my words tangled up. I don't really watch how old they are all the time that much. I mean, I find that I can have birds that breed and produce fertile eggs well into probably close to 2 years, somewhere right around in there. I don't probably ever let them go that far, but I don't really pay that much attention. I'm usually probably calling them at about a year old, maybe. Sometimes sooner. Sometimes I'll, just have another hatch, and I'll just say, well, I'm going to go ahead and call all these birds and throw these in there and let them grow out until spring. Maybe it's going into wintertime or something. So it varies, but I'm probably on the average right around a year old, something like that. Is when I'm usually calling them. You could do it. I mean, if you're really paying attention to your fertility heavy and you want to, like you're selling birds or something like that, and you need to have good fertility if you're selling fertile eggs, you might want to call them out a little bit earlier than that. Just keep replacing them fairly frequently just to make sure. But I honestly find that a year's, I don't really have any issues, and I've grown them out to 2.5 years old before I saw really many issues with egg production dropping or fertility issues or anything.
How often do you hatch out every year?
Several times in the summertime. Usually I don't hatch in the wintertime, so I'll probably be done. Some years I hatch out more, some years I hatch out less. I just get lazy and don't hatch out a lot, but usually I'm hatching pretty regularly from about March through, October-ish, somewhere right around in there, at least once a month. Sometimes I might skip a month, but and sometimes I might do 2 in 1 month.
Are you selling the chicks?
Not very often. Occasionally, not unless I very seldom ever advertise them. if somebody, like I said, locally wants one that knows me or maybe watches the channel and is local and asks me, I'll save a few birds back for them and sell them. I've had some people from time to time. I'll get somebody that wants to buy some quail from me and wants to do it fairly regularly, and that'll last for a couple of months or something, and then they just kind of drop off for whatever reason. So I just don't do it a whole lot. We have started raw feeding our dogs, so a lot of I've been producing a little bit more over the last year, just to provide extra bone and organ meat and that kind of stuff for the dog too.
Sure. Noit, I hope I said that right. Question: I've never eaten quail before. Is it gamey at all? I'm trying to introduce new protein sources to my autistic son, who has a lot of issues with taste and texture. Thanks.
So, well, I mean, I guess the idea of gamey is kind of hard. I mean, everybody's opinion of that is a little bit different. What does that actually mean? I don't think it's gamey at all, but it does have a lot more flavor than like chicken breast, for example. And to me, it's kind of a minerally kind of taste to it. I hesitate to say this because I know it turns a lot of people off, but it has just the slightest hint of liver kind of flavor to me. Now, I know a lot of people that don't like liver and they're like, no, it doesn't taste like liver at all. It's fantastic. I happen to like liver, but and to me, it's just a slight hint of it. It's not something that when you taste it, you'd be like, oh, that tastes like liver. But it is that kind of minerally, earthy kind of flavor to it.
Earthy. That's a good.
Yeah, but it's not super strong either. It's a good. Most people like it. Almost everybody I've ever fed quail to is like, wow, that's really good. But it's super lean. So if you do cook it, like I wouldn't try to just fry it. It could turn out a little bit tough and you might have some texture issues that way. It does a little bit better. You need to add some fat to it or a sauce, like a saute or something like that to make it turn out a little bit better. But there's a lot of ways you can hide it in things and like I said, quesadillas, chop it up fine, do it in quesadillas, do it in whatever. I mean, there's a lot of ways you can hide it. You're talking about the only things I can say is pretty much everybody likes it. If you have Asian markets in your area, there's a good chance that they may have quail. You may be able to go pick one up and try it without having to commit to raising them, and put all that investment into it and then find out you don't like it,
Yep.
And if you don't like it the first time, try cooking it a different way because it is, like I said, super lean. So if like I said, if you just try to fry it, it's probably going to be tough and hard to, not as good.
Okay. Let's see. DS says, question: wild quail keep running into my window and dying. It just happened a couple minutes ago. It's a pretty big boy this time. Is it okay to eat? I feel bad tossing them into the field.
Yeah, I would say it's fine. I mean, my general rule of thumb is if I don't know how it died, I'm not going to eat it. But other than that, I mean, you saw it crash into your window. I wouldn't have any problems with that.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's free food, right?
Exactly. Creative Critter says, question: have you ever had a problem with the city since you are in the city?
No, I haven't. I mean, our city ordinances are technically say I need to have permits for what I do. And quail's not really mentioned in there, so I'm not sure how they would treat that. The rabbits, the city ordinance says you need 30 square feet of space per rabbit, which is ridiculous. That's not at all right. They need anyway, much less. But anyway, I have not gotten permits for anything that I do. My neighbors did have goats for a little while, which was fine until their goats got out and ate somebody's rose bush. And then they got the city called on them. And the city came over and told them, they had to get rid of their goats. The city ordinance for goats is you need a half acre per goat, which even though these are little pygmy goats, they still fall under that, which is ridiculous too. But basically my point to that is when they came over, they looked at my stuff. They said, well, what's he got over there? And she said, well, he's got quail and stuff. And they're like, well, you're supposed to have permits for that. They never came and talked to me about it because nobody's complained. They're not really, nobody's driving around out there looking for somebody that's got chickens illegally in their backyard or, they don't care. As long as you're not causing a nuisance, as long as you're not being an issue with your neighbors or something like that. I make a point of being friends with all my neighbors, making, we get along. I share eggs with them. Whatever I need to do just to be friendly. I'm just pretty much a friendly guy anyway. So I make friends with everybody. So it's pretty easy for me. And because I'm friends with my neighbors, they all know if something bothers them, come talk to me and I'll take care of it. and as long as nobody's complaining, I'm not going to have any issues.
Yeah. I had the same thing with my bees. I mean, I'm legal as far as the state's concerned with the bees, but I still went around, and the first time I harvested honey, I went around and all my neighbors got a jar of honey, just so I didn't have to worry about them, complaining about the bees and whatnot.
Yeah, I always tell them, like, we get a new neighbor, I always tell them, hey, I do this stuff over here. If any of that bothers you, you let me know. I'll, do what I can to make sure. But I mean, the quail make a noise, but they sound like songbirds. So nobody even knows, that's a quail. I've got in cages back there, and the rabbits don't make any noise. So.
Right. And your neighbors appreciate when you go to them, and ask them or tell them, what you're doing. It's like you're putting them first, you're saying, I just want to make sure everything's, they love that. So,
oh yeah, I've never had a
problem with it.
Yeah. All my neighbors have been like, oh no, I don't care. Do whatever you want.
Exactly.
I've also got a pretty good size yard. I mean, I own, my backyard, the lot behind it, and the lot beside that. And I don't have any neighbors right behind me. So that makes it a little bit easier too, probably.
Yep. All right, David says, questions for both. Do you feed once a day, or do you keep your feeders full day and night?
Well, I mean, I put feed in the feeders once a day, but there's always feed in the feeders. I don't let them run dry. I don't have any issues with quail overeating. If the feeders run dry, then they kind of start panicking. It's like they think they're never going to get food again. It's the weirdest thing. But so I pretty much keep food in the feeders all the time. I just put it in there once a day.
Okay. This is funny. I just got to throw this one up here. Ed says, don't tell Zach, but I follow you two more.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all fine.
I haven't talked to Zach in a long time. It's been.
Yeah, I was just there for QuailCon a couple of, it's been a couple of weeks ago.
How is that going? I've been meaning to ask,
Oh, pretty good. I mean, we had pretty good turnout. Going on, I guess this is the third or fourth year of it. Yeah, I don't remember. Anyway, but yeah, we're starting to see some of the same people showing up every time, but a lot of new faces showing up. So yeah, it's good. It's a very, family oriented kind of event. You see a lot of the same people, get to know them a little bit. It's kind of like a family reunion in a way, but then you get a lot of new people.
And everybody's looking forward to next year.
Yeah. So he's doing pretty good though.
All right. Well, we're actually over our time limit, but
oh boy, time flies when you're having fun, isn't it?
Exactly. Go ahead and see if we can't find us some winners. Sousaphone, you're going to get some hatching eggs. Hope I said that right.
I'm curious if your name's actually Susie.
Most likely.
That's my wife's name.
I don't think I saw anybody earlier for the everybody wants hatching eggs. Well, anybody that wants a $50 gift certificate, comment real quick, and the first one that comments is going to get it. And we'll go maybe another 5 minutes if we have any more questions. Sousaphone, I guess I should tell you how to contact me with your info. You can email me at Terry@Coturnix Corner, if I can spell it right. Send me David DeBarge. You're going to get the $50. But again, email me, Terry@CoturnixCorner.com. I need a good shipping address, a good phone number, and a good email, please. And I'll get that forwarded over to the sponsors, and they will get your orders out real quick. So I don't see any more questions. Chris, you got anything else you want to add? Just close it out, or?
Probably should. I don't know right offhand. Nothing comes to mind.
Yeah, me neither. Chris, I really appreciate you taking time to come on. I know I asked you a while back and something happened. I don't know if it was you or me that couldn't make it, but
I don't remember. I remember I remember that happening now that you bring it up, but I don't remember why.
Regardless, I want to let you know, anytime you want to come on the show and talk quail, you're more than welcome.
Well, thank you. I appreciate being here.
Absolutely. All right, Chris, thanks again. I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. Thank you guys for the great questions. Another quick shout out to our sponsors, Gopher Ridge and Hatching Time. Put them up there real quick. I do appreciate both of them very much. So, guys, I think we're going to pull the plug. We will be going live next week, Sunday, where we will be announcing the next winner for November for the Coturnix Kids Project. So check that out. Sundays is just laid back. We talk about whatever, anything and whatever. And then I don't know about next week, Tuesday. If I can find another guest that wants to come on, we'll go live Tuesday. Otherwise, I'm going to take a week off. So again, thanks for joining us, guys. Have a great night. And Chris, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you too.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Take care.
All right, Chris. We'll see you, buddy.
All right, man. Have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye.